entrants have slowed down a decent amount, so I'm gonna get started. I want to try and keep these things to a on time as possible situation. So I want to thank you all. Welcome for coming to PhotoCare's second ever bite-sized virtual learning. We started the bite-sized learning series in store, and unfortunately this year only had the opportunity to start with one of them. It was digital tech panel discussion. And it was a great thing. But the aim for the bite-sized learning series was to share focused bits of instruction, information, training, teaching, or knowledge in a small form factor, and get you just that specific information that you need. So keep an eye on our events page on our website. We will be adding more classes to this. I'm going to be your host for the Capture One classes. I'm Anthony. I teach all of our in-store Capture One training classes. I'm medium format support specialist, Capture One specialist. I also know quite a bit about other cameras. I've actually been using Capture One software for the last 17 years. So I'm in many different, e-commerce studio situations, advertising studio situations. I managed a couple digital departments. So I've got a bit of experience with the software. So, we're, as I've mentioned previously, if you're just tuning in, we've got Manny Tejeda and John Schlesinger in here that are going to help answer any questions you may have. Again, please direct all questions that you need to be answered, questions on the material that we're talking about, through the Q&A portal, not through the chat. The reason we ask for the Q&A portal is because it is a lot easier for us to track, stay on top of, and know we answered your question that way. With all of that said, this is a beginner's class. We are talking about sessions versus catalogs today. We're going to go over the differences of them and their uses. There's not going to be a whole lot of image manipulation, actually any image manipulation today. It's really just talking about the two different options that Capture One gives you in as far as how the software runs. So let me switch over to this beautiful little slide presentation we put together for you. And I'm going to close out some of the chat windows for right now. Manny, if there's anything that you need me to address immediately, just let me know, unmute yourself and shout it out, and I'll reopen that. But let's get started, all right? Capture One. So this is our first class. Like I said, we're going to do about 30 minutes of instruction, 15 minutes of questions and answers. Obviously, if the question period takes longer than the 45 minutes, we'll keep going. If there's more that we want to learn and I have time, I will try and get that all to you today. All right, so what is Capture One? If you're new to it, have only used Lightroom, Bridge, or Photo Mechanic or anything like that, Capture One is a fast and intuitive workflow that can be customized to fit your unique needs. It's an advanced photo image editor that supports tethering platform and can also work with cataloging. This is different than cataloging your entire archive. It's a little different, but a little the same. We'll get to that in a minute. It contains our flexible digital asset management and all the essential adjustment tools. So virtually anything that you need to do to turn your raw file into a TIFF or a JPEG or a PSD or whatever it happens to be that you need, you can make that happen. Are there some tools that are maybe not the strongest? Sure. And if you continue to take some of my classes, I'll tell you which ones those are. But it's a fantastic platform. And personally, for myself, I've used it for 17 years. Any image you see that's probably on my Instagram has, generally speaking, only gone from camera to Capture One and then straight to the web. I, generally speaking, do not need to open Photoshop for any of the type of work that I do. Everybody's needs are different, though, and if Photoshop is something that you absolutely have to have, then you can absolutely do that. But I definitely do 95 to 98% of my workflow on images in Capture One. You've got fast and easy tethering to a large variety of cameras with all the shooting tools that you might need for live view, things like that. Speaking of live view and shooting tethered, we will have a course next week. We're going to publish the date either today or tomorrow on that one. We've got to fine tune a couple more things, but we'll have that ready for you. Capture One, Capture One believes that they are built on the best raw processing engine, renders precise colors and incredible detail. There are a couple of different modes. As we're mentioned, we're talking about catalogs versus sessions today. If you are someone who is using Capture One for Fujifilm, uh, uh, or Capture One for Sony, not in the Pro modules, you will only be able to work in catalogs. If you need sessions, that is either a Capture One for Fuji, Capture One for Sony Pro, or the full version of Capture One Pro will allow you to use sessions. We're going to talk about what the differences are with these. So which version do I use? What are the ideal situations? Catalogs are great for managing existing work. You can take sessions that you've done and combine them into a catalog for searching and filtering long process work. Sessions are great to quickly work on the images, directly work on that job and that job only. It is just, generally speaking, when set up right and as designed, one session per job type situation. When set up correctly, your parent folder houses all other associated files. So it's a lot easier this way when you need to deliver your files to your client at the end of the day. I will say that 95 to 99% of your advertising, commercial, e-commerce jobs that you will see out there, anything run at a production studio or an in-house studio that handles work for other brands or clients, customers, that kind of thing, it's all going to be done through sessions because of the way it's set up, it makes it easier. You can take your sessions after the fact, though, and to make searching and filtering easier, import them into a master catalog. Personally, I do this myself with, I photograph a lot of automotive events. And so for events that I photograph year after year, I will, when I come home from that event, I create a session to import to and work from. And then once I'm done working on it, I've delivered the images that I need to deliver. If this is a type of project I know that I'm going to shoot year in and year out, I will combine those into a catalog because it will make my life a lot easier later on when I need to go back and search for something. As long as I've entered my metadata and my keywords correctly, it allows me to search, find everything without having to open 6, 7, 8 different sessions of the same thing. I can import all those into one catalog. The files can live offline, which we're going to talk about. Sorry, it's actually on slide 3, but files can live offline. I can take that catalog database, search quickly without having to have the raw files. Catalogs also work really well for jobs with undefined shots. Personal work, wedding work, travel work, street photographers. You'll see a lot of people in the wedding portrait market who tend to use catalogs. Part of this is because of that holdover from, let's say, like Lightroom, and it's the only way you can work, but also because it's a really smart way to organize because of the way that catalogs work with virtual organization and your foldering options. Get to in a second. Sessions are great when you have well-defined shoots. You've got a shot list that you need to follow and go through, and every shot that you're doing, it needs to be named, what that shot is, the folder needs name, everything needs to match. Sessions set that up for you a lot easier and a lot better to maintain. Fashion shoot, editorial shoot, still life, catalog, all of these kinds of things. Vast majority of any commercial e-commerce jobs, they're all going to use sessions. Catalogs are great for remote work. You can have your raw files stored on your RAID server, offline storage, whatever that solution happens to be, and still have your catalog database on your laptop or on your work computer and be able to look at those files inside of that catalog without having that drive turned on, without being connected to that drive. So I can have my raw files on my hard drive with, my backup hard drive next to it. I can have the catalog database on my laptop, unplug from those raw files with a catalog. I can go to the coffee shop or I can go on vacation. I can still look at those images. I can actually do a little bit of image editing to those images still. Anything that's light that doesn't actually require the data, such as do a little bit of curves work, contrast, saturation, those types of things are no problem. When you try to do keystone processing or like using a heal layer or a clone layer to do some spotting, that is going to require the raw file to be connected. So with catalogs, you can still look at the files that you shot, without having the raw files with you. The performance is improved by having centralized settings and previews, so it should be a little bit faster than having sessions. For sessions, great for digital tech situations. Easy to manage the data, easy to add files or data to any session, because sessions allow you to have a direct computer network interface to your whole computer. With catalogs, you don't have that option. So we're going to show you what that means in just a second. All right. Catalogs use virtual organization. There are no physical folders made or created anywhere on your computer after you've created that catalog database file. So this is a screenshot. We'll jump into Capture One in a minute or two. This is a screenshot of what Capture One is going to look like in the library view of a catalog. You'll notice right over here, this says catalog, and it's got my catalog name. This is my drop-down menu where I can choose different catalogs or sessions. You will notice that I have made in the user collections section all of these different albums, projects, and groups. However, when I come to where this catalog is saved on my computer, you'll notice all you see is the database file of the catalog with the same name as what we have here. If you highlight it, it doesn't show an arrow with folder breakdown. There's nothing else that you get to see. So catalogs are not going to be creating a physical folder structure. It works virtually. All of this is created so that you can have the images where you need to have them in a way that the organization makes sense to you. Sessions are mainly comprised of physical folders that you use to organize your images. When you create what you create in the software, you can find in your Finder. So you'll notice now, if I come back over to this same library view right here, and it says session, and it's got my test session name, and if I scroll down, you'll notice here also is my system browser. Here is where that session actually lives in my pictures folder right now. And you'll notice in my capture folder, I've created all these shot folders like you would on a typical e-commerce job or catalog job, advertising job, whatever it may be. Because I have created these in the software and it's a session, when I go into my pictures folder in Finder over here, and I go to my sessions folder and find that matching title, you'll notice that those folders are actually also still there because we're using physical folders in sessions. So it's different. It's all going to be self-contained. Everything that you need to have associated with this job should fall inside of this parent folder. That way, at the end of the day, if you need to deliver it to your client, you can just simply, easily put it on this root folder on Drive. They get everything that they need. With catalogs, that gets a little bit different. If you were here for our class last week, we discussed how files work in catalogs. I'll get to that when I bring Capture One up. We'll recap that portion as well. So talking about virtual organization, physical organization, sessions are also able to leverage a little bit of benefit from virtual albums as well, but it's a more limited capacity. Whereas you can do all kinds of unique and intricate foldering options and have the same file in multiple folders. Say for wedding photographers, you've got your catalog set up for all of your weddings, and then you've got an album for this past weekend's wedding, and you've got a picture of the mother and the bride. You can create a secondary album later on in catalogs that is, say, just portraits of mother and bride. So you can work on that for your portfolio or your website. You can have all of those images in one place also, and it doesn't duplicate the data. With sessions, you don't get that, you don't necessarily get that amazing level of albuming, creating albums. You can a little bit, but it's not set up exactly the same with the root structures and how they break down. But the biggest benefit to virtual albums, virtual organization in Capture One is SmartAlbums. And SmartAlbums are virtual albums that display images based on a pre-configured set of search data at album creation. This is extremely helpful for quick culling of images that will match the search criteria. And there are a lot of options. If you haven't explored SmartAlbums, I definitely recommend it. It absolutely will speed up your workflow. It'll make your life easier. It has absolutely made my life a lot easier when it comes down to finding, sorting, and grabbing the things that I need. And some of that search criteria is, rating, which is how many stars you put on it, your color tag. You can sort by aperture, automatically sort by. There's difference between using filters and smart albums. Smart albums are going to pull from anything that is in your favorites. So you will notice for this session that I have created over here, I've got this session, I've got all these shot folders. You'll notice all of these have hearts next to them. So having hearts next to them indicates to the session that these folders are associated with this session. You absolutely have to set these folders up with as favorites if you want to be able to leverage smart albums, which will fall under where this red box is that says session albums. If you have not added a folder with images as a favorite inside of your session, it will not show up as a search result in smart albums. As I mentioned earlier, sessions also allow for direct access to the entire computer system and all files on your computer. This allows you to quickly view anything in your computer and quickly add to a session if need be. Catalogs, on the other hand, do not allow for this kind of access. Any file in a catalog must be imported via the import dialog box. Now, why this becomes important, if you're someone who's not on a production set, you don't have an art director next to you, if you're working by yourself, this may not seem as readily apparent. But for those that have worked under a high-paced on-set situation where there's a crew of crews waiting for you, either as a photographer running it yourself or as a digital tech running the software, being able to very quickly get things in or not is going to make your day a lot smoother and make a lot less work for you. So say the art director just airdropped me a layout. If I were in catalogs, I would need to go to the import dialog box, find where that was, hit the import window, and then put it where I need to put it. With sessions, because you'll notice I have this entire view right here that gives me entire access with all these drop downs to everything in the computer. If they airdrop it to me, I can just tab down to where it needs to be, grab that file, pull it over to where it needs to be inside of the software, and it'll move it for me. And I have it really quickly. So let's actually bring up Capture One. And we'll talk about this really quick, because it's nice to have slides, but it's a little esoteric. So I've got both my session and my catalog open right now. The view for these is going to be virtually identical. The only place where Capture One is going to look a little bit different between catalogs and sessions is in the library view panel. So this is our catalog. You'll notice it says catalog collections. So all images is every single image that has been imported to this catalog. And then Capture One in catalogs will break down to recent imports. Now you have the ability through preferences in catalog to set up how often this is going to break out into a recent imports folder. I think the way I have mine set up right now based on these timestamps is every time I hit the import dialog box, you're going to get a new one of these subfolders, which if you're somebody who uses catalogs extensively, that option, which is the default option for catalogs, by the way, you're going to have a lot of things under this recent imports. So you can always change that in preferences by coming up to preferences and then going to recent capture collection. You have the ability to change that a little bit and dial that down depending on how you want to have it set up. That said, you'll notice that now, if I have this collapsed, by default, when you build a new catalog, it will just have catalog collection, all images, recent captures, trash folder. User collection will be empty. This is where you build out your folder structure. So I've actually created this entire folder structure right now. And again, these are all, if you were here for the webinar last week, you'll notice this is similar to what I had, but I've expanded upon it. So these are all virtual albums, projects, and groups that allow me to sort my images and know where everything is. Because while I could just look at all images and come over and start working through my files and start editing my files, once you start to get quite a bit of images in here, this is going to not really work out. And the beauty of catalogs is this ability here. So as I mentioned, I photograph a lot of cars. One of my running projects is things I find on the street. So I've got this one right here called Parked on the Street. And I've got some trucks that I have found and some cars. Mind you, these are all mostly unedited images, so don't judge too harshly just yet. I'll get some finalized ones in here at some point, or I'll continue working on these here. What you'll notice is I can now take these images and have them in different places, because for me, this is part of my Parked on the Street series. But say I want to know, say I'm putting together a book of every single Chevy I found. I can actually create another virtual album here called Manufacturer, and then I can break it down by manufacturer. And I'll have the same car in 2 different places, but I haven't duplicated any data. Everything is still the same. There's only one raw file on my computer. It's just referenced in 2 different places. It makes a very teeny tiny JPEG, and I can see it in both places, which helps me find things. So as long as you put the work in on the front side of catalogs, you have the ability to really sort this out and break it down. You also have the ability to have multiple different types of projects in one place. I also have some landscapes here. And when I click on, and this is all at a hierarchy level, right? So if I click on the one called Outdoors, which is going to be pictures of things outside, it's going to show me everything that resides inside of both folders. But if I break it down and I come down to my next section, which is an album instead of a project, you'll notice I only have my landscape images here, and then my cityscape images in another folder. It helps break it down so I can find things faster. So that's how catalogs really allows you to utilize the software and the tools to get a breakdown that allows you to really dive into it. Sessions, on the other hand, are going to be broken down differently. And if you've worked as a digital tech or in an e-commerce studio or any of those things, this is going to look a lot more familiar to you. By default, you will have your hard-coded capture folder, selects folder, output, and trash. Session albums is going to be limited to the first 2 choices you see right here. A smart album for 5 stars and a smart album for all images. And then I've got other smart albums that I've created. We're going to talk about smart albums tomorrow in our sessions class, so I'm not going to dive too deep into breaking those down today. You will then notice session favorites. This is also going to be blank until you add your folders to it. And if I scroll down through my system folders, by default, this is actually going to be collapsed, but you can then click the tabs to expand out to where you need to go. So I would expand this out to my pictures folder, and then I have all of my sessions in a folder called Capture One Sessions. I spent a lot of time as a digital tech, so being really organized is kind of ingrained in me. You don't necessarily have to go to that level of organizing things, but it actually does help keep things compartmentalized and in the same place. So I go to my Capture One Sessions, and then I find the corresponding session, which is this name right here. You will notice I have all of these folders. So all of these folders are going to break down my shot folders. And then you would continue on as you go through your day, creating, setting them as the capture folder, shooting to it, or importing to it if you're shooting to card, and so on and so forth. You have a little bit less ability to do that crazy deep level of making albums and breaking things down, but smart albums can kind of help with this. You can also create a virtual album, but it doesn't give you that nested level of breaking things out. Personally, for me, I haven't used just albums in here because I've been totally happy with the smart albums. So the smart albums are going to pick whatever result and display just those things. So you'll notice this one is called green tags plus 5 stars. So you'll notice when I click on this, it will show me any image in this entire session that's been added to my favorites that returns those results. I can also create them for anything, as I mentioned. So this is just any image that's got a blue tag on it, or anything that is 3+ stars. When I edit, I tend to hit 3 for everything that I think might be okay. And then I'll come to this smart album called 3+ stars. And when I choose that album, it shows me everything. And then I'll continue to call and revise my edit from here. So then I can scroll through and be like, yeah, this one's definitely a 3, or this one's a 4, or this one's a 5, or you know what? Maybe I've got 2 that are similar and I'll downgrade one of them. And then it leaves from this from this folder. So if I were editing right now and I take this image here and I'm like, you know what? I don't think this one's going to work for my current project. And I hit 2, it leaves that virtual album, but it's still right here. And it just reflects the fact that it's got that 2-star. All right. Let's see. Oh man, looks like Manny and John have been doing a good job with the questions. Those have all been answered thus far. So we're getting right up on the 2:30 mark, which is where we're supposed to stop and do the questions and answers. If you have more questions, please send them in through the question and answer portal. That way I can get you all the help that you need on that. But yeah. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about this. I'm going to tab back over here, and I'm gonna say it again because I can't remember exactly if I mentioned this already. With the virtual albums and catalogs, because you're only working with one raw file, any work I do in one virtual album, so I'm gonna rotate this guy right now really fast.
Anthony, we got a really good question in the chat, in the Q&A right now.
Perfect. Let me finish this one out and I'll get right to it. So when I do the work here to this image in this virtual album and come and view it in any other, you will notice that that work is also been done there. So it's across the board. Because you still only have the one raw file, it just lives virtually in a couple places. So let me open up my Q&A window. Can you, oh, sorry, open 2. What's the difference between a session album and a smart album? Well, and a virtual album. So a session album is just, let me actually switch over to sessions so I can answer this right now. The quick answer, Raul, is because I need to show session album, smart album, virtual album. I'm going to answer Raul really quick. There's no difference between rating with a color or rating with stars. It's whatever you're comfortable with. So whatever tool works for you. You can just use stars. You can just use, which are ratings. You can just use color tags. You can use a combination of the 2 of them. It really boils down to how you want to work. Personally, I start with stars and then I put color tags on them when I know what the actual usage is going to be and where I'm putting it. But it really comes down to what you want. As far as session albums versus smart albums, these are both virtual albums. They do not actually exist. Even in sessions, you'll notice I have these session albums here: 5-star, all image, green +5, 3+ stars, blue. If I actually come over to my Finder window, which I need to open, go to my pictures folder, go to my sessions, and go to this actual session I'm working on. Those don't exist. You can't see them. They're virtual. It's a subset of data that allows you to just look at results as programmed in. The difference between a smart album and just a regular session album is that the smart album, and we're going to talk more about smart albums and how you set them up in the search criteria tomorrow, but they are automatically looking for a specific result to yield and give back to you. Whereas just the generic session album from here, if I just do this, it's just an album that you name and you would physically put images into it yourself. And it doesn't duplicate the data, but you could, if you wanted to create your own subset of these are my faves, that's going to be just the regular session album. All right, so do we have, cool, that should be those. Anybody have any other questions to ask on this? We've got some time, and I definitely want to get you more answers. If you're a late tuner and want to ask something we already covered, I'm all for that too. Don't be shy. Let's speak up.
Anthony, David K in the chat actually says, seems like sessions are like Bridge, physical files. Catalogs are like Lightroom, virtual.
Catalogs are absolutely like Lightroom, without a doubt. In the way that it organizes, it is basically the same theory and structure on how it's set up. So if you are coming over from Lightroom and want to have that same type of feel, then catalogs would be definitely the way to go. You can actually import your Lightroom catalog into a Capture One catalog, and it's going to read your folder structure and breakout very easily. And I guess if you wanted to compare sessions to Bridge, you kind of can in the way that it breaks out in views and displays, but it's a lot more robust than just Bridge because you have all of the other tools that are associated with Capture One. But yeah, pretty much that's exactly how it would break out.
Anonymous in the Q&A says, can you show how you sort through images and compare images?
Can you show how you sort through images and compare images? I mean, yeah, I guess I can. That's not really what today was going to be about, but if we don't have any other pressing questions, I can certainly do that. Give me a second. Raul confirming that in the sessions, if your shot is not marked with a heart, it won't show results. Yes, Raul, if you are in sessions and not the shot, but the folder itself has not been added to favorites, if you had a folder that was not added to favorites, Raul, and didn't put the heart on it to add it there, the shot folder to favorites, it will not display in a SmartAlbum. In order for Capture One to know to search it, you have to add it to favorites. So that's absolutely how that has to work out. If we want to talk about going through sorting images and comparing images, Raul, no. It's not the only purpose. It also indexes that folder as part of the session itself. So, and it makes it easier to access and get to it. So if I were to have this breakout, and I'll answer the anonymous question in a minute, but if I were to have this broken out and these shot folders were not added to favorites, and say Capture One crashes, it's not like the old days where it crashes a lot more often. It's super stable these days, but it's going to happen at some point to you wherein Capture One crashes. If you did not have these set to favorites, this view is going to be collapsed all the way down to root when you go back in, and then you're going to have to drill all the way back down through this to find your shot folders. So when you add them to favorites, they're indexed up here. You can find them a lot quicker, easier, without having to deal with the entire mess of the system folder access that's down here. So adding them to favorites, not only does it allow SmartAlbums to index and search them, it allows you to have access to them much easier. Back in the day, I never added them to a favorite because I didn't understand what it was. As soon as I figured it out, every time I create my session, any image that I create inside of my capture folder is automatically added as a favorite so I can index it and get to it quicker. All right, is it possible? Sessions, that is. All right, Gaspar, I'm not sure if maybe somebody started answering that or what that's in reference to. So, because I'm only seeing, in sessions to your question. How do you automatically have every folder added to favorites from Rupert Ramsey? There actually is no way to automatically do it. It's a manual process. What I suggest with that, and I'll show you how to do it tomorrow, is to use keyboard shortcuts. Enable the keyboard shortcut to set it as a favorite, and as you create that folder in Capture One, you quickly just navigate down to it, browse it, and hit your keyboard shortcut for it. For me personally, my keyboard shortcut is set to Control F, and that'll set it as a favorite. Or you would right-click on the image, and then, so I'm going to remove that one really fast. So if I needed to add this, because you'll notice it does not have a heart next to it in the view down here. If I go to control click, add to favorites, it automatically indexes it. But there's no way to have it done. It doesn't automatically index it. It adds it to the index. There's no way to have it done automatically. It is a manual process. Hope that answers that for you, Rupert. Is there a limitation to the number of files, photos in a session and or catalogs? Crazy Scene, this is actually an amazing question. With catalogs, Capture One has clients that have over 100,000 images in one catalog. Personally, for me, I do not recommend that because that's a lot of images, and all of my years as a digital tech are about, risk management and minimizing any risk. If you have 100,000 images in one catalog and that catalog corrupts for whatever reason, you're locked out of getting to that and seeing those settings. While Capture One tech support, as well as myself, have tools to attempt to fix that, if you can't fix it, you may be locked out of that work. I wholeheartedly suggest breaking it down into smaller bits. I think the biggest catalog I have personally right now probably has somewhere around, I want to say 16,000 images in it, because it's got 3 years of one automotive event where I photographed between, 5,000 or so images per event, something like that. So while you can in catalogs have a lot, I suggest keeping it smaller. With sessions, I try to keep it to a couple hundred images per folder because performance lags will happen. It's not going to crash necessarily, but it might be slower the more images you have per shot folder. And it's a per shot folder situation because of the way that Capture One indexes the previews and the preview generation. So if you've got 2,000 images in one shot folder in a session, it can totally do it, but expect preview generation to take a little bit longer once you dive into that folder the first time. So that might take a second. Anonymous, I'm not sure how to compare and contrast cataloging in Lightroom versus Capture One being better. I don't use Lightroom. I probably haven't touched Lightroom since about 2005. They both do virtually the same thing. The reason I use Capture One is I believe that hands down their file processing algorithm, color science, controls, selective color editing far outperforms Adobe as far as creating your folders and your options. You have the ability to do that. This class today is not about editing or going through and culling or picking images. It's just catalogs versus sessions and how are they set up, because it's a confusing topic for a lot of people. So that one, I unfortunately, Anonymous, I can't answer which is better and why you should switch. I would say test it out, try it. You can always reach us at support@photocare.com. We also offer one-on-one training. So both of those things are options as well. If you want some more in a small bite-sized class like this, it's really a little tricky to kind of get to that part. So that's not something I can answer. Do you have a sort of Capture One for Dummies video or class that is good for beginners? Actually, yes, our catalogs class was last week. Manny can directly send you a message as to how to find it. It's on our YouTube page, I believe, but I'm kind of drawing a blank because I didn't handle where it went right now.
It is on our
on that
page.
name.
It's also on our Instagram Live.
Okay, perfect. Instagram Live, it's also there. So Emma has a question, just to clarify, those individual files or folders that I'm adding to favorites, you add the folders to favorites, not the images themselves. The reason you add the folders is because it indexes what to search and it knows anything inside there is okay to be searched. So it is just the folders themselves that are added to favorites.
Anthony in the chat, Larry has a really good suggestion. You want to check that out?
Let me open the chat window. Give me a second. Larry, not really a question, but I think viewers may benefit from some other examples, situations where sessions may be better than catalogs, vice versa. Likely not everyone on the call is in the same type of photographer. This is absolutely true. So when would a sports photographer use sessions or catalogs? Same for commercial photographers. Even better, how about when a photographer has different types of clients? Sometimes with art directors, sometimes with not, since there is still time, just a thought. Larry, it's actually a great question. I will say that the majority of wedding portrait photographers tend to choose catalogs over sessions because of their ability to break things out and do the type of virtual organizing that I was talking about before with a nested hierarchy and having things be able to live in multiple albums at the same time, but not duplicate data. When it comes to sports photographers, that's one I'm not 100% sure on because I haven't really dealt with any of my clients being sport photographers. But, you know, my still life photographers, whether they have a crew or not, are going to work on a session. It's going to be because they are delivering that session, generally speaking, with raws processed and everything all together at once. They're going to send that out to their client. A session is self-contained and has all of that in there. The reason why a catalog, if you need to deliver raw files and your process files and all the associated things that went with that, a session is hands down the best, because with the way that a hierarchy works and it breaks down, the way that you work in sessions, everything is self-contained in this root folder. Everything is inside of here. Your raw files will be here. Anything you process, providing you have your session set up the right way and haven't deviated, your process files wind up in output. Your raw files stay inside of capture, broken down by shot folder. And if you are delivering raws, this is the best way to do it. And the reason I say this is because catalogs handle where the files live differently. You have the ability to have your raw files live offline, meaning not on your actual laptop or desktop computer, and still have the database file for your catalog beyond the computer itself. If you were to then just take that database file and try to give it to your customer, all they're going to have is just the previews and not the raw files. While technically on import, and I covered this in the catalogs class last week, you have the ability with catalogs to import directly inside of this database file, which will grow this file size exponentially. It would essentially be the same thing as what this will wind up being if it were, you know, did the same thing both ways. But if you're one of the people that wants to have a catalog that's got 20,000 images in it, and you're storing the raw files inside of that catalog database, then it really starts to get massive, because, you know, think about 20,000 images from a 24 megapixel camera, and then think about it from a 40 something megapixel camera. And then if you're a medium format shooter, think about a catalog with 20,000 frames of 100 megapixel images. That starts to get really big. So if you're delivering raw files and your processed, I would say hands down every time it's a session. And that's how every digital tech out there is pretty much working. So that's the one that's how I would break that out. If you're a sports shooter, you know, it's going to kind of come down to you to figure out how you want to set that up. I would think that it might be because of the organization of it, catalogs might make more sense. You don't necessarily need a ton of different folders like you would break out in sessions typically, but because I haven't worked in that world, I can't answer that one. Looks like I've got another question in the Q&A from Raul. Sometimes when making folders in my session for ecom, I have so many they tend to mix due to their weird individual names they have. Yep. Especially when the names are numbers. Is there a way to sort them by date created without altering the number of the folder itself? Not in the current system view. Because the current system view for sessions is just what you see here, and there's no way to organize this by date. What will happen when you add images to favorites, though, and this might help for some sorting, Raul, I'm not sure, is they add to favorites in the order in which you put them. So the first one that you added to favorites pops up at the top of the list and then would go down in order. That may help you. You'll notice this happened when I originally created this session earlier today for the class, or yesterday for today's class. I added everything to favorites in numerical order, wherein, you know, shot 01 was up top and then 2 and 3, so they all went in numerical order. The reason they are no longer in numerical order is because, for the illustration purpose of showing how to add something to favorites, I took shot 1 out. So now, because it was the last one to be added to favorites, it's at the bottom of the list. Maybe that helps this situation. Unfortunately, with Capture One at this point in time, and they're constantly developing the software, there is no option for that yet. Excellent. Glad that worked for you. Question about copy apply. If you want to answer today, awesome. I'll see if I can do that. From Claudio, how can I get the crop tool out of a group? Oh, crop tool, I'm guessing that means. I was like, I don't know a crop tool. When I do select copy apply. So Claudio, what I'm thinking, what you're asking, and I want to make sure, is that when you copy apply, crop is not coming across. Is that what you're asking? There were some changes made to recent versions of Capture One, so I want to ask that. So Claudio, if you could just type back really quick, is that what you're asking? Like when you copy apply? Yes, excellent. Okay, so customizing Capture One is going to help you with that. By default, they now have it so when you copy apply your image, well, your settings from one image to the next, Capture One doesn't automatically pick that. But because there's some reasoning or rationale that they took that functionality out, because crop is really, unless you're doing still life, if it's portrait, people, you're out, not on a tripod, it tends to move around too quick. So by default, they took that out of copy and apply. But what I would recommend is if you control click or right click in the top toolbar, you can customize your toolbar. And we talked to copy and apply arrow is a little bit for a later date, but I'm going to tell you about it now. If in Capture One you are familiar with the adjustments clipboard, wherein you would take all of the settings from one image, hit copy, and it's going to show them. Basically, it gives you that same exact option from the top right next to copy apply. So I can do the same thing and it will check it off. What you then do, if you want to apply across your crop that you have set, what you would do is you would scroll down to, now give me a second to find it. You would scroll down to composition, drop this down, and click the checkbox. And when you do that, it will take whatever crop is on your current source image and apply it to everything else. It would be the same as if I were to come over to the adjustment clipboard, hit a copy from my source image that I am copying from, check off the composition box here, or just the things that I need, because these are all of the options: keystone, flip, orientation, rotation, crop outside of the image, just the crop tool. If I were to click these and then highlight the other image I need to apply it to, image or images, hit apply, it's going to post that crop across all of them. All right, folks, that's going to draw us out just about to the end of our webinar today. If you've got a quick last minute question, ask it, and I'll hopefully be able to get to it. Excellent. Glad that worked for you, Claudio. So, you know, for Capture One, we do sell Capture One licenses through the store, though with things going on right now, that's a little tricky. Capture One does offer a 30-day trial. So you can always download it, install it, try it out in pro mode, see if it works for you. If you're exclusively a Sony user or exclusively a Fuji user, they have a much more affordable pro version for just those software. If you are a Canon or a Nikon shooter, you'll need to buy the full version of pro in order to work with it. CaptureOne.com, you go to downloads for the downloads, or to support for the release notes and documentation. I highly recommend always checking the release notes and the associated documentation so that you may find out if your brand new camera is supported, your file type is supported for the version of software you have. If you need support, always contact support@photocare.com. While the store is closed, the support team, myself included, are still answering emails, so we will get you the help that you need to keep you moving. As well, we have our class tomorrow. We have our Capture One Pro sessions class. So we're going to talk about creating a new session, creating your folder organization, using favorites, using SmartAlbums, importing from card. We will not be shooting tethered in this class. Tethered shooting will be some point mid next week. As I mentioned, we'll have that announced either tonight or tomorrow, so you can get registered for those classes. Looks like there are a couple more questions. I pay Capture One monthly. Does that mean I can have the latest version? Yeah, Raul, if you're on a monthly, now subscriptions are the only thing we can't sell. We sell the physical license keys, which give you that version of the software and any previous version, full activation on 3 computers. I believe, though, if you are paying monthly and you only have version 11 installed, yes. If you're on a software subscription and pay monthly, you can absolutely update to version 20, and I would highly recommend it. Version 20 is now to a point with the latest 2 versions of release, nice and stable. There isn't anything really weird, strange happening, so I would absolutely upgrade to version 20. The new tools are definitely worth it. It says perpetual code, Gaspar. Gaspar, why don't you send me an email and we'll go through that. Yeah, Gaspar, try it again, or email me at support@photocare, and I'll make sure to get you the answer on that. But definitely, if you can, when will I be talking about layers? Rupert just asked. Layers is going to be in a class either end of next week or the next week. We're trying to do 2 to 3 classes a week, trying to spread it out with starting with like intro and then moving our way up to advanced. But we will be talking about it in the very near future. So stay tuned. Our event descriptions will talk about what specifically we are showcasing. So if you see any of the showcase classes on single image edit, believe me, we will have talking about layers in there. So with that said, feel free to register for tomorrow's class if you want to learn more about sessions hand-on, setting it up and working through it. And keep an eye on the events page where we will be announcing our next round of classes. So in which class will you get to the juicy stuff like creating and applying looks, creative sauces during shooting? I'm talking about creative process of Capture One. Larry, it's a great question. It's going to be either the end of next week or pretty much the following week. I want to talk about the basic setup and beginning workings of the software, and I've only got 50 minutes left in this hour presentation, so we're going to be timing out. 50 seconds left. We're going to be timing out in a second, but it's coming up very soon, Larry, I promise. If I have a few seconds tomorrow, I might briefly talk about it, but probably not. No, I won't be talking about it tomorrow. It'll be next week. So end of next week, all that will be covered. I want to thank everybody for coming. I know these are weird times, but we're here for you. So reach out, let us know what we can do. We'll have future webinar options that are not just Capture One, so definitely stay tuned to that. Thank you so much for coming, and I hope to see all of you here tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Be well.